if I'm binding people to a building and they're not being edified.
Mm,
That
mm,
built that edifice does not guarantee edification, right?
mm.
So when we look at this idea of when we look at this idea of church, right? When we look at this idea of a family, you know, even contextually, that word forsaking, when you look at it in context, that word doesn't have anything to do with with missing worship, like attendance. So essentially, the fact that we've attached attendance to faithfulness is just a byproduct of the way that we worship, right? So when we
Right.
see people that come to worship, right, they're there every week, we automatically assume that they're faithful because they're in the building every week. But that's not necessarily the case, right? So when you look at the definition of that word forsaking, that word actually means like desertion or abandonment. So what
Yeah.
he's saying is, don't abandon the body, right?
Right.
Because that whole text talks about falling away. So it was this
Hmm.
idea of people were falling away from the body. They were forsaking this idea. They were abandoning Christianity. And so
Yes.
when we look at this idea of what the Bible essentially says, right? So are we going to then apply that to the person who has to take care of their parents and can't come to worship because they gotta sit with their sick parent? Are we going to then bind that to somebody who can't necessarily be at worship because of a sick child? Absolutely not, right? So when we look at this idea, again, and even in verse number 24, right, we're to consider one another. Consider one another, right? So
Absolutely.
then, so then, like, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So then you go over to Luke chapter 17, and you see when Jesus came to the lepers, what did the Bible say? It said they stood afar off. That was an
Hmm.
example of social distancing.
Social
Why?
distance.
Because what do you want to see? So if,
Yep.
we, if we're gonna sit back here and we're gonna say, okay, man, let's start using our minds, man. Let's start digging into this text because none of this stuff is new. Man,
Yeah.
leprosy was a pandemic. You
Yep.
feel me? Like even way back in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, what did it say? Put them outside the camp, isolate them, quarantine them until they have been healed, right? And when they've been healed, amen, somebody, when they've been healed,
Hmm.
then the high priest will let people know, and then
Yep.
you can come back to the general population.
Yep.
So when we look at this idea of
Gotta be clean.
reasoning, man, like we got to ask ourselves, okay, well, we worship. So are our sick and shut-ins forsaking the assembly, right? Because their medical status is not in a place where they can be at worship. Like,
Yeah.
listen, one of the main reasons why we went, and we've been online even before the pandemic, but one of the main reasons why we made sure we have a lot of people that are older, that are members at Genesee, that can't come to the building. They couldn't come to the building even when everything was
Right.
was was normal. You see what I'm saying? So when we begin to look at this idea of true worship begins with your heart, man. It begins with your mind. You see what I'm saying? Because you can have false worship, like Alvin said, or one of y'all said. You could be doing the wrong thing in the right place. And
Mhm.
so I don't want us to look at that because we see the Pharisees did that to Jesus, man. Jesus out here healing people on the Sabbath. Wait, you're not supposed to do that. So wait a minute. So you're gonna tell me I'm not supposed to help somebody, right? On a
Right.
day that was given to me as a blessing by God. So I can't be a blessing to somebody else on this day because you told me nobody's supposed to work. So it really comes to a place where, you know, I believe there's this phrase that I use all the time, and it's called backyard first, man. Backyard first. If I'm focused on my backyard, I don't got time to be, over here calling Brother Stovall and say, "Hey, Brother Stovall, y'all in sin because y'all not going to the building." No, let
Yeah.
me work on my backyard because when
Right.
I'm working on my backyard, right, I can I'm not really paying it. I'm encouraging him. I'm thankful for him, but I'm not
Hmm.
really out here, trying to be the church police. You feel me? So that's
Hmm.
that's where I stand on that.
Amen.